Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's Knowledge at Noon. I'm joined by Dr. John Corso, and today's event is called Challenges in Communicating with Stakeholders. So, um, I just want to give a brief introduction here. John Corso, he's an adjunct instructor in our Certificate in Strategic Management program, and he's also um, professor in the master's degree in project management here at School of Continuing Studies. He is a president and chief executive officer at Strategent Corporation, management consultant firm, and some of his areas of academic and professional expertise is focused on organizational strategy, performance management, program and project management, process improvement, measurement evaluations, ethics, and individual and organizational assessment. And so, with that, I would like to turn it over. And again, thank you for being here today.
All right. Well, thank you, Jonathan, and thank you, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to Knowledge at Noon. As Jonathan said, I'm John Corso, and I've been working here as a faculty member at Georgetown University for 21 years. And so the time flies. It seems like just yesterday that I started, but I've been here quite a long time now. And so a lot of the information I'm going to be presenting to you today is based on the model that my co-instructor and business partner, Gary Steinberg, and I developed, which is called the STEP cycle. It stands for strategy, tactics, execution, and performance. It is our approach to strategic management. But today we're going to be focusing in on a very important aspect of that, which is communicating with stakeholders, and that includes customers, which is really a special category. We're going to talk about that a little bit in a moment, but that's what we're going to be focusing on today. This year, we actually finished writing a book on the topic, everything that we've been teaching in the classroom. We wanted to make you aware of that this book is now available. It's the STEP Cycle book, Strategy, Tactics, Execution, and Performance to Manage Your Organization Strategically, again, by my business partner and co-instructor, co-professor, and myself, Gary Steinberg, and myself, John Corso. And that's now available. You have a handy QR code. And there are chapters in that book specifically devoted to customer and stakeholder management, and also the communication process and how it pertains to strategic management as a discipline. All right, so the first major topic we're going to be talking about this afternoon is strategic leadership. All right, and so this is a picture of the STEP cycle that I was just speaking to you about. And those of you who are former students of ours, you may recognize this. If you were students of ours from a long time ago, we may not have developed it yet, but this is essentially the synthesis of all the ideas that we have been teaching in our strategic management program. And so the STEP cycles I mentioned is composed of 4 basic steps: STEP, strategy; S, T for tactics; E stands for execution, and then the P is performance. Strategy is essentially your organization's formula for success. And then tactics is still planning, but it's how you're going to execute that strategy. And then the execution itself, which is the E, which is actually getting it done, primarily through program project management and the resources, budget, labor, the resources necessary to get your goals and objectives accomplished. And none of that really means anything unless you're able to prove that you got the job done. And that's what performance measurement, evaluation, and accountability is all about. Now, you see at the 10 o'clock corner and the 5 o'clock corner of that wheel, the STEP cycle wheel that moves in a clockwise direction, that we have both internal alignment and external alignment. And it's at these corners where the heavy communication and management of stakeholders is going to take place. Now, it takes place throughout the entire wheel, the entire cycle. It's continuous. But you see those gold stars there, kind of highlighting the fact that this is where the most intensive communication and stakeholder management is going to happen. All right. So let's first start, though, about the concept, start into the concept of strategic leadership. All right. So what is strategic leadership? And there's several models out there that we think are very good. The one we're going to be focusing on today is called ECQ's Executive Core Qualifications. It's the model that's used by the U.S. federal government. There are other, what we'll call honorable mention models that we also talk about in our classes and mention in our writings as well. At Harvard University, there's John Cotter's model, Leading Change. There's James McGregor Burns, who developed the transformational leadership model, and then Peter Drucker, the renowned management consultant who developed the management by objective models. And these are all models we think are excellent. They're time tested, and we have used them to inform our practice and our teaching. But today we're going to be focusing in particularly on ECQs, Executive Core Qualifications. We'll call them tools to meet those challenges of working with and communicating with stakeholders. I'm going to be focusing on 4 out of the 5. There's 5 total. And then within those 5 ECQs, there are sub-elements. We'll be talking about some of the sub-elements, but we won't be talking about all 5, just 4 of the 5. And then I'm going to be highlighting specific elements. And why focus on this model? Because we really believe that this model points the most impactfully to stakeholder management and the criticality of it, how important it is. So let's take a look at what this model has to say. So ECQ1 is leading change. So every good executive leader, or really any good leader at any level, needs to be prepared to lead some sort of change, because you're trying to move your organization, or that portion of the organization that you're in charge of. You're trying to move it forward from the place that you are now to the place that you want to be, which is a better place. All right. So good leaders, but especially ones at, we'll say, the C-suite level, the executive level, we want them to be able to have this skill and have this skill strongly, because it's very complex at that level. So the idea behind leading change is, as you see highlighted there, is establishing an organizational vision. In other words, what do we want to see happen in the future? What good things do we want to happen in the future? And then how do we make that happen, particularly in a complex, changing environment? So getting down into the sub elements of that ECQ, notice that it talks about a lot of different things, as you see up there: creativity and innovation, external awareness, flexibility, resilience, etc. But notice in particular under external awareness, who's out there, what's out there. That's where your broader stakeholders are. You're going to have internal stakeholders as well. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But we want to be able to shape those stakeholders' views of things. We want to positively influence them so that they understand the world in the way that we think is going to be most beneficial to them and effective for them. And so that's going to be a very important skill to develop in any leader. Vision. What is vision? Again, that is what's happening in the future, what we want to be happening in the future, the good things that we want for our organization, our vision for it. It's a longer term view, meaning out years. and it's something that we want to be able to share. All right. So yes, we're shaping views, but we're also shaped by views. In other words, we want the inputs and the interests of our stakeholders to inform what we want to accomplish in our organizations. So in the second ECQ, that's called leading people. So you're leading people towards something. In this case, vision, mission, and goals, basic essentials to any organizational strategy. Those of you who have taken our classes before will know about that. Those of you who haven't may already know about it, but can learn more if you are in our classes. And notice that this ECQ also focuses on facilitating cooperation and teamwork with internal and external stakeholders, because you can't do it alone, and also resolving conflicts and doing it constructively so that everybody feels like they're benefiting from what's happening in terms of executing the strategy, or even before that, in formulating that strategy, that everyone feels like they have a voice and a contribution, and that they're heard out as the organization develops its strategy. So in these sub-elements, you notice, again, it talks about resolving conflicts and disagreements. It talks about inclusion. It talks about providing ongoing feedback. So these are all things that, again, are tools to meet the challenges of communicating with stakeholders. You want to be able to inspire and foster team commitment. In the third ECQ, here we're talking about customer expectations and being able to meet them. Well, before you can do that, you have to know what those expectations are. And the only way you're going to do that, obviously, is through communication. They've got to be able to tell you, hey, this is what we're looking for from these are the problems that we're trying to solve, and we hope that your organization can assist us with that. All right. And so, we've got to get that horse before the cart, so to speak, and be able to understand expectations so that we can have a chance, certainly, of being able to meet them. And again, kind of diving down a little bit into the granularity here, under the customer service sub element, notice that we have highlighted anticipating and meeting the needs of both internal and external customers. I would add to that stakeholders more broadly. More on the difference in a moment. But again, we want to be able to do that. We want to, from the beginning, understand well who these people are and what they expect of us. And then finally, ECQ 5 talks about building coalitions. Okay. So, and notice this is for U.S. federal sector, but it's really applicable to any of the sectors, public, private, or nonprofit. It behooves you as a leader in your organization to build coalitions with the other leaders, with the other stakeholders, with the other people who have interests, whether they occupy formal leadership positions or not. You want to be able to build those coalitions so that you can work well together with people who are affected by what your organization does. All right. You want to think in terms of common goals, finding common ground. Very, very important. So again, kind of diving a little bit into the detail here. The sub-elements of ECQ 5 talk about building alliances, building strategic relationships, perceiving organizational and political reality and acting accordingly, and then being able to persuade others. So all of these, as you can see, readily see, are tools or methods or approaches for meeting challenges in dealing with, managing relationships with, and communicating with stakeholders. Employee engagement. So I said it's both external and internal. And so these represent challenges. How about the people that make up, that comprise the organization as individuals? All right. They're going to need effective leadership that's going to involve empowering, adequately empowering those who work in the organization, ensuring that they have a sense of fairness, that they understand that they're being treated fairly, and that these skills are developed in leadership positions throughout the organization. And then there are certainly communication skills that we want to be able to develop, but communication isn't just words. You have to be able to send messages, right? And so the things that you see over there to the right, things like skills match, competitive pay, strong management practice, promoting teamwork, innovating, being willing to train and develop organization members, promoting work-life balance, supporting diversity, and providing for performance-based rewards and advancement. Those are all messages that get sent to organization members, and where you are communicating to them that, yeah, you value the things over there on the left. You value engagement, you value empowerment, you value fair treatment of individuals within the organization. Listening. So communication isn't just talking to people, right? For example, you're going to be giving me your Q&A at the end of this presentation, right? And I'm looking forward to it. Communication is listening to the voice of customers and stakeholders in general. Okay, so I promised I would talk a little bit about, what's the difference between a customer and a stakeholder. Customer, really, some would say, is a type of stakeholder, but a special one. They really deserve special mention and treatment. They're the ones that simply directly use our products and services. So they're very important to us for obvious reasons. They immediately benefit from what we do as an organization directly. They transact with us. If we're in the private sector, they provide our revenue. And so that's very important to us. That customer base, existing certainly, but also new customers, always thinking about growing that customer base. The people essentially that buy our products or use our services or products, and it's based on the value propositions that we provide to them. Things like price, quality, reliability, brand loyalty, and other things that are important to customers. But stakeholders also have an interest in these things too. It could be anything from, if we're in the private sector, the people that invest in us, everyone really, even whether you're in public sector or not, you're going to be affected by what your lawmakers have to say and do and think. The general public is going to be interested in what you're doing, particularly as you get larger, and many other types or categories of stakeholder groups. And so we want to understand them well. We want to understand them deeply. We want to be able to say, all right, who are our customers and stakeholders? Can we identify them in the first place? Who else do we want to bring into that fold? Who are our potential customers and stakeholders? What do they want, today? What do they want tomorrow? What's coming on the horizon? What directions should we be innovating in? How do we keep our existing customers? How do we obtain those new customers? What are the types of messages that we need to send? What are the value propositions that we need to offer? So a lot of that obviously involves heavy communication. And so let's talk about specifically within the context of strategic management, strategic communications, and what is that? All right. Sometimes you'll hear the abbreviation StratCom. It's similar to another abbreviation, MarCom, marketing communications. But StratCom, similar idea. How do you communicate within the context of your organization strategy? Things like mission, vision, goals, and objectives. How do you get those things well communicated to your audiences? How do you draw feedback on those things from various audiences? Because again, this is a two-way street. You want the input from the people that are very interested in or have expectations for what you do as an organization. And so communicating your strategy, mission, vision, goals, objectives, and how you're going to accomplish those things is going to be critical to dealing with customers and stakeholders and keeping them in a positive relationship with your organization. And that's the way you're going to advance your organization's mission, right? So you're going to have to draw upon the best of several disciplines, especially public relations, marketing, advertising, and just good, solid management practice. So the questions we're going to ask ourselves here, to what extent do we really need to bring in professional help at this point? And the answer is even the small and mid-sized need to be thinking about this. Don't try not to do this alone. Get the benefit of the folks that really know how to do this well. They'll help you get your communications aligned with your organization strategy. If you're saying one thing in communication messages, but your strategy is trying to accomplish another thing, that's working at odds with what you're trying to get done, right? So you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that your communication strategies and campaigns are effective, that they're going to accomplish what you want them to accomplish, that they're going to get the message across, and that everybody understands their role in terms of developing the strategy, communicating the strategy, executing the strategy, measuring to the strategy, everything that is needed to get the job done in an organization, and how it affects the people, not just our direct customers, but people that are interested in us as well. And getting this right and getting this done well and early is extremely critical to success. I can't stress that enough. It's not just an idea that is an academic abstraction. In our practice, we've seen it, and we've seen it repeatedly. What trips up an organization is the inability to understand, work with, and communicate with customers and stakeholders. If you don't do that well, and you don't do that well from the beginning, it really does trip up your effectiveness. So can't stress that enough. A little bit from the literature, some interesting points. What is strategic communication? It's the purposeful use of communication by an organization to fulfill its mission. I think that's great. And that involves analyzing your audience, analyzing your message, and having that message well packaged and well communicated. And then, of course, what I just said earlier, that the communication needs to be aligned with the strategy. If you're trying to accomplish something in the form of a goal or an objective, if you're trying to get your costs down, or if you're trying to be more innovative, and your communications are saying something else, at best you're going to get people confused, right? So we don't want that. And so that process of communication really needs to be fully interwoven into everything that you're doing in strategic planning, but also strategy execution, every phase of strategic management. All right, so I want to show you a little example here. It's always good to do that. Communicating the mission, Starbucks. So I'm going to show you a brief clip, and it's CEO Howard Schultz, and demonstrating his concept of how working with stakeholders looks like and feels like. And so let me go ahead and pop that on for you. And after that's done, we'll continue to discuss the topic. So let me go ahead and call that up.
I was the CEO of the LA Urban League, and I had occasion to engage with Starbucks. They were closing a store in our neighborhood. I wrote a letter to Howard Schultz, and I said, we're doing a significant fundraising effort around revitalizing this neighborhood. And the last thing we need is a major retailer like Starbucks to pull out. You can't close the store in this neighborhood. 2 weeks later, I was walking into my office, and the assistant said, "You got a phone call?" I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Yeah, Howard Schultz is on the line. He'd like to talk to you." And I said, "Wow." Howard Schultz said, "I got your letter. It's a really thought-provoking letter. I'd like for you to fly up and talk to us about what we should do in communities, not just in LA, but across the country." So I did. I flew up and had a very positive discussion. And Starbucks invested heavily in the transformation of that neighborhood. They got to see very up close and personal the values that Starbucks ascribes to. Its fundamental commitment to changing people's lives, investing in schools, investing in jobs, making neighborhoods better. That's the kind of company that I want to be a part of. Thank you. One of the challenges around doing social good is people try to do too much, and they say, "I want to change the world." What we talk about is one person, one cup, one neighborhood at a time. This year, change the life of one young person. So you know what? In 2013, I'm going to help someone who needs after-school tutoring. I'm going to become a big brother or big sister. I'm going to take some time and volunteer down at the local shelter. I'm going to change one young person's life. If everybody says, "I'm going to change one person at a time," before you know it, we've changed a neighborhood, we've changed a town, we've changed a city, we've changed a nation.
All right. So that kind of shows you in a very moving and exemplary way, how to view stakeholder communications and stakeholder management. And so when we show this video to our students in class, some of them say, "Hey, that's a little bit realistic or unrealistic or idealistic to say that your mission is to inspire and nurture the human spirit, one person, one cup, and one neighborhood at a time." But you saw in that video how CEO Howard Schultz kind of made it real, where he had a specific stakeholder who was interested, in, "Hey, I don't want to see this Starbucks close down." And he even flies out the stakeholder, has a meeting with him, shows him around, and says, "Hey, this is what we're about." And now this entire vignette gets communicated to a very, very broad audience. So it just kind of gives you a feel on how these things can be done and can be done well, so that people are able to say, "Yeah, that's not just pie in the sky. This leader is actually backing up what he or she is saying and is important to them." All right. All right. So knowing your audience and being able to analyze your audience, deeply understand them. It's a matter of being able to answer some key questions. Your stakeholders do have expectations, and you need to know what they are. You need to be able to place those things in the context of culture and demographics, and that's going to drive what we'll call appropriateness. All right. So how to frame your message. You want to know how much they know already. So in other words, you don't want to be insulting intelligence, so to speak. You want to understand what's relative or relevant rather to them, and what evidence will be sufficient for convincing them, persuading them that the particular vision, mission, goals, and objectives that you have in mind really are in their best interest. And then finally, how do you capture and maintain their attention? Now, here's some tips to think about. Stakeholders, they don't know the strategy like you do. All right. And so that's what you have to remember. You have to say to yourself, yeah, I've got this passion for what I'm doing in my organization. But if I'm going to get people involved in what I'm doing, I have to be able to communicate that passion. And so they don't know what they don't know. And so if I can let them know, hey, this is our mission, this is our vision, these are our values, what's important to us, our goals and objectives, and be able to communicate that on a personal level, certainly, but in various other forms of communication and media, and then anchor everything we do to what we say. In other words, have it be well aligned, our actions well aligned to our words. If we can't do that, we're not going to be effective. And then, as I said, communication is part of every aspect of strategic management. Any good strategic management process is going to weave it into every step. That includes the formulation of a strategy. That includes developing tactics in order to accomplish a strategy. It includes when you're actually executing the strategy. It includes when you're measuring to the strategy and providing evidence to people that, yes, what we're doing is working, and it's working in beneficial ways and ways that are important to you. Here, we can prove that, all right? But especially at the corners of that cycle, right? When you're just beginning, see at that 10 o'clock position where you're just beginning to formulate your strategy, all right? And you're talking in particular to outside stakeholders, existing partners and stakeholders, reinforcing those relationships, new stakeholders and partners, certainly understanding the direction of your industry, what the market looks like, understanding your customer requires a great deal of back and forth communication. And so it's particularly important in that initial step. And then we find as you have completed your planning, all right, both at the strategic, which is your mission, vision, and goals and objectives, but also your tactics, which is your how-to, such as what you're going to invest in terms of capital assets, who you're going to bring aboard in terms of your workforce. Is it going to be a diverse and inclusive workforce? Your technology, your budget, all of these things are going to be the how. That's a great time to really intensify the communication process and ensure, from a practical point of view, ensure that you're getting your message across, it's being well received before you move forward to execution. All right. And then, of course, though, you're going to continue through the cycle in terms of executing from the budget through your programs and projects, and then measuring, being able to be accountable for what you accomplish and being able to demonstrate and, yes, communicate to people. Absolutely, because measurements are meaningless if they're not communicated. Communicating to the people that are interested, yes, we're getting the job done, or if we're not getting the job done, here's what we're going to do to course correct. All right. And again, maintaining that trust, maintaining that integrity and accountability. Internal and external communications involve many flow points of communication, including everything that you see on that chart there, which has been around for years. There's a new one, of course, down there at the bottom, and that's artificial intelligence, particularly interactive artificial intelligence. It's something that you don't want to leave out of your process, your communication project or process. You don't want to be left behind because your competition is definitely doing this, using things like interactive AI, using not to replace people, but to enhance the efficiency and the scope of your communications. And that includes both sending communications, but also interpreting what's coming in, because AI can be very helpful in that regard as well. It can perform content analysis for you of what your stakeholders are saying and thinking, particularly on a mass scale. So if you have a higher scale, if you're mid-sized or larger in particular, you want to be able to funnel this information that's coming into you through things like AI so that it can be better analyzed. All right, so we want to keep that in mind. But we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. These conventional approaches here, things like town halls, displays, conferences, meetings, they're still around. We're not replacing those. And that includes physical meetings, all right? Because the human being still needs physical contact, even in this digital age. And so we want to bear that certainly in mind. And so some of the things in our experience, in our travels, town hall meetings, my business partner, Gary Steinberg, when he was strategic planner for NASA, they had town halls in 10 cities for NASA around the country. Surveys have been around for a long time to understand well your customers, your employees, other stakeholders, talking to stakeholders, working through things like focus groups, 10 to 12 participants, certainly a reasonable amount, and then engaging your stakeholders in more formal settings. At Veterans Affairs, where Gary and I both served, the Four Corners meetings were meetings between VA leaders, but also with the White House or the Office of Management and Budget, veteran service organizations, Congress, and the General Accountability Office, so that we had regular and frequent conversations with these critical stakeholders. And then how do you get ready for the challenge as an individual? Well, you may have heard it said, you need to have your elevator speech, and we agree that's important. Have a 25-word or so elevator speech that reflects the vision for your organization. Learn it like the back of your hand. Be ready to communicate with stakeholders at any given time. So as they ask you, what do you see happening 5 years down the road? You have a ready answer for them. All right. And so it's important to not overly rely on structured communications, but be ready, like Howard Schultz, to be able to have a conversation one-on-one with a critical stakeholder, because that stakeholder is going to connect with other stakeholders, and they're going to remember what you said, and they're going to share that impression that they had of you with all the other people that they deal with. This is our approach for analysis. We get into this more in depth in the book, and also in our classes. Our approach to analyzing customers and stakeholders, it's based on things like bargaining power and attractions to your products and services, in the case of customers, but also in the case of stakeholders. What is their degree of influence? What is their ability to affect you? In turn, what is the severity of your impact on the stakeholders? And so being able to analyze that, and then being able to answer some additional questions beside that fairly standard approach to analyzing customers and stakeholders, being able to say, okay, how do we move the market from apathetic to enthusiastic about what we're doing? Or in the case of more general stakeholders, how do we convert adversaries into win-win partners? All right. And so not just analyzing who they are, coming up with a plan for dealing with them, but then thinking about moving people from a place of apathy to a place of enthusiasm, from a place of adversarial or skeptical to a place of a sense of win-win partnership. And so we add that dimension in our own approach, and then more on that if you take our classes, read our book, or both. So some final thoughts to tie all of this together, and we'll open it up to Q&A. Communication is not so much a step. We have our step cycle: strategy, tactics, execution, performance. But we mentioned, the hot spots, as you're doing your environmental scanning, before you even set pen to paper on what our strategy is going to be, intensive communications there. And then after the planning is completed, both at the strategic and tactical level, being able to say, all right, now we need intensive communications here. But it's not a step. It's something that is continuously going on. So that's why we don't say that is part of STEP. But it's there as part of our model, because communication is the grease that gets all of the steps, those 4 major steps, to flow smoothly, but particularly at those critical junctures that I mentioned. Stakeholders, customers and stakeholders, are the audience for those communications. So knowing who they are and what they're really interested in, and I can't emphasize this enough, early on. Don't find out later on, they were expecting something else out of me or us, when in fact, you were going in another direction, right? No, early on, understand who they are and what they're interested in. It's crucial to getting the strategy right. Okay. And that applies at the organization level as a whole, or if we're narrowing down to, let's say, the program, project, initiative, department, branch, doesn't matter what you're in charge of. Understanding, what are the expectations? Who are my critical customers and stakeholders? A thorough analysis of this and following through on that analysis, don't just have it be an exercise, right? Enables a job well done in strategic management. All right, so we're ready for Q&A. I've got my contact information up there, different ways to get a hold of me. I have the QR code again for our newly issued book. All right, and where we get into greater detail on this and other topics pertaining to strategic management. So these are all the ways that you can get a hold of us. We're on Substack. Our paywall type stuff is behind Strategent HQ. Our general stuff is behind strategentcorp.com. And you've got my personal email, you've got my social media, so different ways of getting a hold of me.
I want to show you all just an advertisement here. So this is the certificate here that has been alluded to, Certificate in Strategic Management. John is one of the faculty members here. But I would encourage you to take a look at it here, and we have upcoming dates. They're either in classroom or live online, which is Zoom sessions at the posted time. So July 22nd for classroom, live online September 9th, and the next classroom will be November 18th. And then just one other thing, I'd also like to promote, we have a new certificate for Gen I and team productivity. If you're somebody of a P&P background and looking for continuing credits towards your certification, this has been recently approved for continuing credits on that from PMP itself, or PMI, I mean, Project Management Institute. So, okay, so let's see. First one up. So, let's see. ISRA. I'm most likely pronouncing that wrong, but AISRA. So ISRA, I think, wants to know, how do you see AI improving communications with stakeholders? So, and then there's another part. Some stakeholders are used to more conventional ways of communications, and sometimes automated communications may seem impersonal.
I agree, and you want to overuse that. So it's contextual, situational. Where are the places that AI can be helpful? And so you want to be careful with that, because remember the personal touch. Remember the Howard Schultz video. The AI wasn't going to work in that situation very well at all. And there's no substitute for the human personal touch. There's no substitute for human decision making, human input into every aspect of this process. I think where AI comes into play is the efficiency. the speed and efficiency. So the efficiency in developing, let's say, communication copy, which you still have to own, right? Your organization has to own. You have to own it yourself individually. But also, as I said, coming in the opposite direction where information is coming in and you want to do a content analysis of it. You want to say, okay, what are people thinking? What are people saying? And so AI can get things organized. It can summarize what is happening in terms of what various stakeholders are telling you. And so it has a valuable role to play, I think, in being efficient in, let's say, translating things like developing word clouds or things like summarizing, what let's say the center of gravity of the input is. What are the key pain points that people are experiencing, things like that. So to me, it's the big value right now, state of the art for AI is efficiency. That's my thought on that.
Okay, great. Let's see. Okay. Thank you for your response and offering this seminar. So a wonderful presentation, Professor Corso. I agree. Wonderful. Our next question is from Michael. Michael wants to know, what is the role of BODs in this process?
Yeah, board of directors, critical. What bigger stakeholder is there, right? Depending on where you sit, of course. But no, they're stakeholders, but they're also really actors in this process. And so people can be dual-hatted. And so the board of directors certainly have a hand in developing, a huge hand in developing things like mission, vision, goals, and objectives. They're going to be the ones they're telling you, hey, that's why they're the board of directors, that this is the direction we need to be going in. It's the very nature of their role. But they're in turn listening to input from external stakeholders, right? And they in turn are communicating primarily. They're what management scholars call boundary spanners, right? They are taking what's inside the organization, presenting it to the outside in many ways, but also bringing in information into the organization to inform what the organization is doing. So let's say you're a C-suite executive, you're relying heavily on what the input that board of directors is giving you, but not exclusively, because you're forming your own relationships as well. And so we don't want to put the entire burden on the shoulders of the board of directors, but certainly I can't think of a more crucial player in this, both from a stakeholder perspective, but also from an organizational perspective. They kind of have a foot in both worlds. So that's my thought on that.
Okay, excellent. Let's see. The next one up is from Jay Stefank, I believe, and want to know, how do you navigate conflicting stakeholders' expectations?
Right. Well, first of all, you have to know what they are. Okay. And what trips up a lot of organizations, a lot of organizational leaders, even at we'll say a lower maturity level, is they don't even know that it's out there, so that they get taken by surprise, and they say, "Oh, I didn't realize that let's say interest group X had this issue." All right. So step one is to know that the conflicts are out there. But then the second step certainly would be to say, okay, take a step back and say, all right, where's the common ground? Where's the win-win? And so we talk about that in our stakeholder analysis, right? We say, moving from adversarial, skeptical to partnership. Now, the thing is, you're never going to get everybody to agree on everything. All right. And so you don't want to be unrealistic about it. But what you can do is say, all right, you're looking for this, you're looking for something else. This is how we can address all of these simultaneously. All right. And if not simultaneously, maybe a compromise solution that improves everyone's interests. In the case of the private sector, we've got products and services. And you really have products and services in all the sectors, don't get me wrong. But certainly You want to think about segmentation, market segmentation, so that you're providing, let's say, something for everybody. So you have service lines or products lines that are meeting a variety of value propositions. Okay. And so that's the way you solve that. But again, you've got to know what those desired value propositions are in the first place. You need to be able to go back and say, all right, this is feasible for us to do. If it's not feasible for us to do, we're not going to directly get into business with this, but we can partner with someone and bring them into the equation. All right. And then they can provide those products and services and value propositions and work with us more in kind of an ecology, so to speak. But then also to essentially look at, all the ways, again, that we can address a wide variety of concerns through a larger array, let's say, of products and services that we would normally have altered or offered, excuse me. So those are some of the key things. But again, don't skip that step of discovering where they are in the first place and then thinking in advance about how you're going to address them. Don't get caught flat-footed. That's our advice.
Excellent. Let's see. Michelle wants to know, as a PMO director, everything just shifted up for a second. Okay. As a PMO director, my team and I are often in the position requiring big influence, but having little authority. Any tips for how to lead when you're sometimes seen as the least important person in the room?
Right. Well, the first word that pops to mind there is sponsorship. Okay. So you can't do it alone. And so this is part of stakeholder analysis, though, right? All right. So before you even, set foot, moving in the direction you want to move in, you have to say, all right, who has my back? Who's my sponsor? Who's going to help me with this? Who's going to champion this for me? So you identify, you don't have the power. You don't have the authority. Okay, great. Who does? All right. Find them, talk to them, communicate with them, persuade them that, hey, our ideas have merit. We think that you could really help us with this. And get that step accomplished first, right? Before you even move forward. Again, we've seen it, some of it's school of hard knocks, but we've seen it happen over and over again where people think they have a great idea and they're ready to blaze forward. And no, you don't have what you need backing up your ideas. You don't have the resources. You don't have leadership behind you. So form that relationship. Okay. Do that analysis, do that identification, find out who it is that has the ability to help you with what you need. And then as a program manager, as a head of a PMO, as a leader, then thinking about, okay, with them helping me, now I can move forward. So hopefully that makes sense.
Excellent. All right, so we're approaching our time boundary here. I guess I will end with, we have just a comment, not a question, just a comment, I guess, from Francisco. Hey, Francisco, I haven't talked to you in a long time. And it just says, thank you for highlighting audience analysis as a step. In my working experience, this is crucial. Doesn't matter what your message is, your audience analysis provides you parameters on how to tailor your message, including what language to emphasize, who might be a credible messenger, and what formats work better to reach the intended audiences. There's no one-size-fit approach, and you're already making a big mistake if you fail to do this analysis in the beginning. And that, wow, this sounds exactly like from my background with marketing, knowing your audience and and assigning all their beliefs, attitudes, everything, their persona, shaping everything towards that. Basically, cross-checking it. Would this imaginary person you made, would they care about what you have to say?
No, I agree. And we gave a shout out to marketing communications, as you recall, a little bit of the presentation. So absolutely part of this. and it's a great skill set to have. I also want to say thank you to some of the particularly familiar faces I see out there, but everyone that joined us today. For those that are familiar, good to see you again, and hope to connect again in the future. And for those that I'm meeting for the first time, I would love to see you in class or hear from you or have a conversation with you. So please do reach out.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Corso. Thank you everyone for attending today. Again, we will send this out here. If you have any other questions, please reach out to us. Please reach out to Dr. Corso as well. And so this has been Knowledge at Noon. And thank you again, everybody. Have a good day.